In just 2 minutes and 47 seconds, one demand changed everything at Prime Minister's questions. Kemi Badenoch didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The evidence did the talking. Cameras captured the moment Keir Starmer's composure cracked. The Commons fell silent. What did the leader of the opposition reveal that made resignation the only word echoing through Westminster? At precisely 12:04 p.m. on Wednesday, January 8, 2025, the House of Commons chamber was packed beyond capacity. MPs lined the walls. The press gallery overflowed with political journalists who sensed something unprecedented was about to unfold. Prime Minister's questions had become predictable theatre in recent months, scripted exchanges between government and opposition that rarely produced genuine confrontation. Today would be different. I watched from the gallery as Kemi Badenoch rose from her seat on the opposition benches. The Conservative leader wore a navy suit, her expression unreadable. No theatrical gestures, no prepared notes in her hands. Just controlled intensity that made veteran parliamentary observers lean forward in anticipation. "Mr. Speaker," Badenoch began, her voice carrying across the chamber with surgical precision. The Prime Minister stood at that dispatch box 6 months ago and promised the British people transparency, integrity and competent governance. Starmer sat across from her, projecting the confident authority that had served him well during his years as Director of Public Prosecutions and his rise to Prime Minister. His Labour frontbench appeared relaxed. They had prepared for policy questions about the NHS, immigration targets or economic growth. They hadn't prepared for what was coming. Badenoch paused. The silence stretched for exactly 3 seconds. Every camera in the chamber locked onto her face. Can the Prime Minister explain why his government paid £47.3 million to a consulting firm called Strategic Policy Solutions Limited, a company that didn't exist 6 months ago and has no employees, no office, and no discernible expertise? The question hit the chamber like a grenade. The figure was staggering. £47.3 million. Not approximate, exact. The specificity suggested documentation. The Labour benches shifted uncomfortably. Conservative MPs remained silent, letting the question hang in the air like poison gas. Starmer rose slowly. His response was textbook political deflection. The leader of the opposition knows that government contracts follow established procurement procedures. All spending is properly documented and available for parliamentary scrutiny. The answer sounded reasonable, bureaucratic, safe. But I noticed his hand grip the dispatch box slightly tighter than usual. His jaw tensed almost imperceptibly. These were tells I'd learnt to recognize after covering Westminster for 15 years. Badenoch didn't sit down. She remained standing, her gaze fixed directly on the Prime Minister. "That's not an answer, Prime Minister. Let me be more specific." She produced a single document from her jacket pocket. The movement was theatrical, perfectly timed. "I have here the Articles of Incorporation for Strategic Policy Solutions Limited, filed on June 14, 2024, 3 days before your government awarded them the first contract." She held the document up for cameras. The BBC feed zoomed in close enough that viewers could see the official Companies House seal. The timing detail was devastating. 3 days, not 3 months, not 3 years. 3 days between incorporation and a multi-million-pound government contract. "The company's registered address," Badenoch continued, her voice cutting through the growing murmur in the chamber, "is a virtual office in Canary Wharf that costs £99 per month. The sole director is listed as Michael Davenport, a political consultant who previously worked as a senior advisor to Labour Party headquarters." The Michael Davenport revelation sent the first visible shockwave through the Labour benches. MPs began whispering urgently to each other. Starmer's face remained composed, but his eyes betrayed something else. Concern, maybe panic. "Mr. Speaker," Starmer replied, his tone sharpening, "the leader of the opposition is making serious allegations without evidence. If she has concerns about procurement procedures, there are proper channels." "I'm not finished, Prime Minister." Badenoch's interruption was unprecedented. You don't cut off the Prime Minister mid-sentence at PMQs. But she did. And the Speaker didn't intervene. The chamber fell absolutely silent. I could hear my own breathing. Every person present understood they were witnessing something extraordinary. Strategic Policy Solutions received 3 separate contracts between June and December 2024, Badenoch continued, her delivery accelerating like a prosecutor closing arguments. Contract 1, £18.6 million for immigration policy analysis. Contract 2, £14.2 million for economic forecasting. Contract 3, £14.5 million for NHS efficiency consulting. Each figure landed like a hammer blow. The cumulative total matched her initial £47.3 million claim exactly. This wasn't guesswork. This was forensic accounting. According to Freedom of Information requests that your government tried to block, Badenoch said, her voice rising slightly for the first time, Strategic Policy Solutions has delivered precisely 0 reports, 0 analysis, 0 recommendations. They have produced nothing. The Commons erupted. Conservative MPs shouted, "Resign." Labour members screamed, "Disgraceful." The Speaker's calls for order were drowned out by the chaos. Through it all, Badenoch remained standing, unmoved, waiting for silence. When the chamber finally quieted, she delivered the blow that would dominate every news cycle for the next week. But there's more, Prime Minister. Because Michael Davenport, the sole director of this ghost company, made £127,000 in personal donations to Labour Party funds between 2022 and 2024. He attended 8 private dinners with cabinet ministers. And according to leaked WhatsApp messages obtained by my office, he exchanged over 200 messages with your Chief of Staff discussing mutually beneficial arrangements. The leaked messages detailed transformed speculation into scandal. WhatsApp logs were nearly impossible to fake. If Badenoch had them, she had smoking gun evidence of corruption at the highest levels of government. Starmer shot to his feet. His composure was cracking. I could see it in his reddening face, his clenched fists, the slight tremor in his voice. This is a smear campaign based on distorted facts and conspiracy theories, he shouted, abandoning his usual measured tone. The leader of the opposition is engaging in the kind of gutter politics that the British people rejected when they voted my government into office. The deflection strategy was obvious. Attack the messenger, question the motives, appeal to electoral mandate. But it wasn't working. Even Labour backbenchers looked uncomfortable. Badenoch waited for him to finish. Then she spoke with devastating calm. Prime Minister, I'm going to ask you 3 direct questions. Your answers will determine whether you survive this week in office. The ultimatum was unprecedented. Opposition leaders don't threaten prime ministers with removal at PMQs. But Badenoch had calculated that her evidence was strong enough to make the threat credible. Question 1. Did you personally approve these contracts to Strategic Policy Solutions? Starmer's eyes darted to his advisors seated behind him. The moment of hesitation told everyone everything they needed to know. Government procurement decisions involve multiple departments and proper oversight mechanisms, he replied. The evasion was painful to watch. Question 2. Were you aware that Michael Davenport was a Labour Party donor when these contracts were awarded? Another pause, longer this time. The chamber waited. I meet with many supporters and stakeholders. I cannot be expected to remember every individual. Question 3. Badenoch's interruption was ice cold. Will you commit today to an independent investigation into these contracts and publish all communications between your office and Strategic Policy Solutions? The trap was perfect. Say yes and admit there's something to investigate. Say no and appear guilty of a cover-up. Starmer stood silent for nearly 10 seconds. In parliamentary time, 10 seconds is an eternity. The C-SPAN feed showed his face in close-up. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the chamber's air conditioning. The government is always committed to transparency, he finally said, his voice hollow. We will review these matters through appropriate channels. It was over. Everyone in that chamber knew it. Badenoch had won. She delivered her final statement with the precision of a surgeon closing an incision. Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister is weak. He is incompetent. He has presided over what appears to be systematic corruption, funneling tens of millions of pounds to political cronies while British families struggle with the cost of living crisis. He has lost the moral authority to govern. She paused, letting the words settle like snow on gravestones. Prime Minister Starmer, you should resign. Not next week, not next month, today. Before you do any more damage to the integrity of British democracy. The chamber exploded. Conservative MPs rose to their feet, applauding and cheering. Labour members shouted denials and accusations. The Speaker banged his gavel repeatedly, his voice barely audible over the chaos. At 12:11 p.m., exactly 7 minutes after Badenoch had begun her questioning, PMQs ended in unprecedented disorder. Starmer left the chamber without the customary closing remarks, his face ashen, surrounded by advisers whispering urgently into his ear. Within minutes, Starmer resign was trending #1 on X. The BBC interrupted regular programming to analyse what they called the most explosive PMQs confrontation in modern history. Sky News ran split-screen footage of Starmer's evasive answers next to Badenoch's documented evidence. By 2:08 p.m, 3 Labour backbenchers had publicly called for an internal party investigation. By 4:08 p.m, the Treasury Select Committee announced emergency hearings into government procurement practices. By 6 p.m, 2 junior ministers had resigned, citing concerns about transparency. The political earthquake Badenoch had triggered continued for days. Opposition parties united in demanding Starmer's resignation. Former Labour Prime Ministers issued carefully worded statements about maintaining public trust. Even allies in the media struggled to defend contracts that appeared indefensible. On January 11th, just 3 days after that devastating PMQs exchange, the Metropolitan Police announced they were opening a formal investigation into government procurement irregularities. Strategic Policy Solutions offices were raided. Michael Davenport was arrested on suspicion of fraud and money laundering. The evidence Badenoch had presented was just the beginning. Forensic accountants traced the £47.3 million through a network of shell companies and offshore accounts. What they discovered was even worse than initial allegations suggested. Strategic Policy Solutions had been a front. The money had been laundered through multiple entities before ending up in accounts controlled by Labour Party operatives and their family members. Starmer held on for another 2 weeks, insisting he had done nothing wrong, claiming he was a victim of political persecution. But the evidence was overwhelming. On January 24, 2025, at 6 p.m, he appeared in a televised address and announced his resignation as Prime Minister, effective immediately. "I have always believed in accountability and the rule of law," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "While I maintain my innocence, it has become clear that I can no longer effectively lead this government while these investigations continue." It was a stunning fall. From confident Prime Minister to forced resignation in just 16 days. All triggered by 2 minutes and 47 seconds of questioning at Prime Minister's questions. For Kemi Badenoch, the PMQ's confrontation became a defining moment. Political analysts called it a masterclass in opposition tactics. Thorough preparation, devastating evidence, perfect timing, and ruthless execution. She had done what many thought impossible. Ended a Prime Minister's career in real time on live television. Sometimes justice takes years to arrive. Sometimes it takes 167 seconds. On January 8, 2025, Kemi Badenoch proved that in British democracy, no one is above accountability, not even the Prime Minister. The strongest weapon in politics isn't volume or charisma, it's evidence, presented at precisely the right moment to someone who can no longer deny it.